Hey guys, Carl from Moose Plays. Today I'm taking a preview look at a prototype copy of the upcoming game Dionysia from designers Franco de Joya and Joebyn Sewell and publisher Buttonshy Games. More specifically, I'm going to be taking a look at the solo expansion Soliloquy designed by Mike Mullins, a name you might be familiar with if you're familiar with many of the Buttonshy solo modes or solo games as well. Big fan of Mike Mullins, so I'm very excited to be taking a look at this game. This is a sort of, at its core, head-to-head battle kind of game, two-player, but now with the solo mode, head-to-head against an AI player, where you're basically working in the theme of Greek theater, trying to build a three-act play with three scenes in each of the three acts, which is actually going to be a spatial puzzle where you're trying to sort of organize icons in different horizontal and vertical rows to maximize scoring, as well as some other sort of scoring goals that each specific card might have printed on them. Disclaimer, as this is a preview look at an upcoming Kickstarter game, I was given early access to this by the publisher, but as always, I will do my best to give you my own honest opinion on the game. With all that said, let's head down to the table to see how the solo expansion for this game works, and then I'll meet you back up here to let you know what I think. To set up a solo game of Dionysia with the solo Soliloquy expansion, first begin by taking the 18 scene cards from the core game, giving them a good shuffle, and then somewhere on the table, generally off to the sort of top of the area, I'm going to place the deck down and reveal 3 of these scene cards face up in a market offer row called the stage. And for the game, you're going to need space for a sort of array of 9 cards stacked on top of each other in columns of 3. So I'm going to set out an area over here for myself and an area over here for the AI opponent, Thespis. But then also for the solo expansion Soliloquy specifically, I'm going to also need to take what are known as tragedy cards. There are 6 of them in the expansion, giving those a shuffle. Now you'll see before I get into it, this is a print and play copy of the expansion. So while these are the cards, these are just general playing cards on the back. I'm going to give those a good shuffle. And then I'm just going to set them sort of off down here to get into when we need them. And with that, we are all set up for gameplay. Now, a game of Dionysia is going to play out over a series of 9 rounds. And on my turn, I am going to choose one of the 3 scene cards from the stage to add into my sort of performance. And my performance is going to be made up of 3 acts, each act containing 3 scene cards. What that means physically is I'm going to have 3 columns of cards, and they are going to be stacked up such that the top card is visible completely, and the bottom cards are simply showing whatever icons are shown sort of at the bottom of that card. So let me explain a little bit about these cards, actually using these 2 cards. You'll see that every card, while it has sort of a title for the card, also has these 2 sections that are sort of related to scoring or abilities, and then 2 icons printed at the bottom. And it says here, for example, some of them have this feather marking, and these are sort of instant triggered abilities that happen when you play this card at the top of your scene, or sort of at the top of a particular act, which is known as the key scene, which is the top scene in an act. And what that means is this is going to instantly trigger when that card is the key scene. And also at the end of the game, if this card is a key scene, I will be scoring 2 points for any of this sort of pattern that I create in my entire performance. And this pattern can be read from left to right or from top to bottom, as you'll see in just a second, as things expand out in my play area. The other cards that instead of having that instant trigger sort of feather ability is going to have a different end game scoring condition that will also be counted for scoring in addition to the patterns at the end of the game, should that card be your key scene in a particular act. And what that means is on each turn, I'm going to be taking one of these cards from the stage and doing one of 3 things with it. Well, in the first round, I only have one option because I haven't started any acts in my performance, but I could, for example, if I'd already started an act, well, I'm getting ahead of myself. When I take a card, if I'd like to start a new act, I'm allowed to. And remember, I'm allowed to have, or I will have by the end of the game, 3 total acts. And when I'm placing it into an act, I need to decide that that is a particular act. So if I place this here, I can't later then place 2 cards here, or 2 cards here, or 1 on either side. I have to decide, is this Act 1, is this Act 2, or is this Act 3? But then once it's been played out, on a future turn when I take a card from the stage, I can choose to start a new act, again, declaring which act I'm starting, or I can choose to upstage the card, which means I place it on top of the card, therefore making the new card the key scene in that act. Or I can choose to downstage the scene, and what that means is this gets slid under the cards that are already on the, in that act, so that only the symbols are showing. And I mentioned before that we are going to be scoring those patterns both horizontally left to right and vertically top to bottom, so you can kind of already see how those patterns might play out. Here I've got cup, skull, and I need cup, skull, skull, so in a future turn, if this was in the act next to it, cup, skull, skull would happen there. Or for example, in a future turn, if I downstage like that, cup, skull, skull would be scoring, sorry, you're a little off screen, cup, skull, skull would be scoring down like that as well. And you can sort of make those patterns overlap and sort of connect in different ways. And you'll see that some of them, for example, here is skull, skull, skull. If I managed so that it was 4 skulls, so for example, if I had those 3 cards in a row like that, that would count as 1 set of 3 and a second set of 3 simply by having those 4 skulls in a row. So it's very important when placing into specific acts to think about how those things are going to slot together, but it's also going to be important to think about what your key scene is accomplishing. And in a multiplayer game, after you've taken a card, your opponent will then also take a card, and you'll take turns back and forth doing that. But in the solo mode, the AI will always take the card to the right of the card you've chosen. And if you take the rightmost card, it will loop around and take the leftmost card from the row. And the AI is just going to simply fill in Act 1, bottom to top, Act 2, bottom to top, and Act 3, bottom top, because the AI is not scoring anything in this game. And the AI also doesn't care about any of these sort of instant triggered abilities. Instead, anytime the AI triggers one of these instant trigger abilities, they're instead going to flip over one of these tragedy cards, which is generally going to cause some kind of attack or some kind of negative thing to happen to me that I need to react to in order to continue doing well in the game. And ultimately, it will be a beat your own score solo mode with a sort of point threshold to do better than at the end of the game. So that's basically all there is to the game, but let me go ahead and read these 3 cards so you know what's going on. This first one says I get 2 points if this is Act 2's key scene, means the top of Act 2. This one says when I play this as a key scene, I get to rearrange the order of all of the cards in one of my acts. And this one says if it's the key scene, it will score 1 point for every skull in Act 3. So these 2 are kind of competing with each other because this one wants to be Act 2's key scene, but this one scores points if I have lots of skulls in Act 3. In any case, putting this in Act 2 is not a bad idea because then I can expand in either direction with skulls to potentially score that pattern. So I am going to take that and I am going to start that as my Act 2 key scene. Let me slide that over a little bit just to give myself some space. I'll move things around on screen as needed. And then the AI will take this one and again just slot it into their Act 1 lowest scene. And with that, we then replace 2 more cards. Here we've got Desperate Please, which wants a sort of sword, skull, sword pattern. And it says if it's a key scene, 4 points if I have more swords than my opponent. That's very nice for me. Without Honor, the other new card, 3 points if the act it's in has no skulls. And it scores cup, sword, sword. Now, if I take this and I'm getting points for having more swords, the AI is going to take this, which is a little bit of a potential problem, but not really. Because I can always get more swords later. Yeah, I'm going to take that one. Placing that like that, and now we do have skull, skull, skull moving across. Like that. This is now my 3rd act. It means AI takes that and simply overlays like that. 2 new cards. Doomed Prophecy, Skull Cup Cup. 3 points if this act has no swords. I'm kind of hoping for something on this side that has a skull to the right side. I do want more swords. The problem becomes, I want this later because I want a skull in between this sword and this sword. So let's see what we can work on. Having this one is not a bad idea. This one's sword, sword, sword. So yeah, all right. Then I am going to take this one. I'm going to slot it underneath here like that. Because what that does then is it gives me skull, skull moving down, potentially scoring for that card right there like that. Then the AI will take this one, so that means they're not taking away my sword. That gets played there. And I just realized already in the first turn, I forgot to do that. So let me retcon for a minute. Final rehearsal. As the performance approaches, you must sacrifice creative freedom to ensure its success. Place this card near one of your unfinished acts. You may no longer downstage cards in this act. Wow. All right, well, let's say I put it there since I haven't started Act 1 yet. That way it doesn't mess anything up. The other two are scoring conditions, so they don't get tragedy cards. I'm sorry I missed that. I need to pay more attention. All right, then back into what I was doing. We refill. I guess that should stay where it was, placing here and here like that. Now, remembering then, I need to build up from the bottom if I play into Act 1. So that actually changes things up quite a bit for me right now. The new cards we got here, 4 points if you score each of your patterns at least once, meaning cup, skull, cup. And this one here, 1 point for every sword in Act 2, cup, cup, sword. I am going to take that Forbidden Desires and I am going to play it down here at the bottom of Act 1. Because again, I can no longer downstage cards in that act, which means they take this one, but I still then have one more sword than they do. That gets played like that. Then, my turn again, but first we got to put these things back out. Selfish Ambition is an instant ability. Says swap one of your cards with a card on the stage. Interesting. And here, 4 points if you have more cups than your opponent. I don't really like any of those things. Skull, sword, sword. Because I was thinking this doesn't look bad for the top of the first act, because that skull would become skull, skull, skull. Swap one of the cards with a card on the stage. Actually, there's no way I'll have more cups than them. Scoring each pattern is going to be doable. I'm going to take this because I want that card later. And I'm going to place that one there like that, which means he's going to take those cups and play it like that. 1 and 2 like that. All right, let's see what we got now. Moral Quandary. For every cup in Act 1, gain a point plus sword, cup, cup. That doesn't help me. A Mother Weeps. If you have more skulls than your opponent, 4 points. Skull, cup, skull. That's a shame, because if I put that there, that's cup, skull, skull. But I definitely have more skulls, and 4 points is a lot. So I was aiming for that one, but I might not be anymore. I'm going to take A Mother Weeps and play it there. Yeah, I already messed that up with no skulls. Hold on a minute. That's 2 points per skull, sword, sword. That's a skull, sword, sword. And I don't think I'm going to be able to get sword, sword there. This one ruins that skull, 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 but 4 points more. But that's still 4 points more. But I could get rid of this. This is just 2 points. Yeah, let's do that. I'm going to take this card. But the problem is if I swap Swap one of my cards with a card on the stage. I was going to swap this one and this one. No, this one and this one. But then I have 1, 2, 3, 4 skulls, and they have 1, 2, 3, 4 skulls. I don't have more than my opponent. That's a problem because that's only scoring me 2 points then. Whereas if I take this one, I could potentially score much more. All right, well then I'm going to do that and just be what it is. Yeah, but I don't know if there's more skulls coming. Yeah, you know what? I'm going to do it. We're going to push our luck. I'm going to play that. And I'm going to switch this one and this one. And then because I played that, they're going to take the one to the right of it, which is that. Let me fix this so you can see it better. Like that. And they take this, placing that one there like that. Whoops. Like that. Then placing out 2 more cards. Ooh, okay. Now we're good with the skull. Skull, cup, skull, skull, cup, skull if I put it there, but let me see what we just got. If this is Act 3's key scene, 2 points, 1 per cup, cup, cup. And here, if you score at least patterns at least once, but I can't. This is going to be away unless I really want to cover up the middle, and I don't. All right, so I am going to take this, and I'm going to slide that under here. And unfortunately, right to left doesn't work. So this skull, sword, sword doesn't count for that pattern. But that does mean I have more skulls, which is good for that. I still have more swords. This is also now skull, cup, skull, and skull, cup, skull like that. They're going to wrap around and take this one, like that. Placing out 2 more cards. Hamarsha says if the act has no cups, 3 points, and then sword, skull, skull. And then here, 4 points if each of your patterns scores at least once. 1 point for sword, cup, sword. Well, I don't have an ability to do anything. This thing is scoring 4 points. Because I'm not ever now going to have sword, skull, sword. This one, sword, skull, skull, plus no cups. No cups is dangerous because there's only 1 card that comes out in the last round, and one of these, both of those have double cups. So I could risk it, but there's a lot of cups out there, so I think, yeah, let's do it. I'm going to take that and upstage that one. Like that. And now that I just realized that, did they have any more feathers? No, good. I haven't made any more mistakes. They will take this card away. Then my turn, well, flipping the last card over, yay, no cups. This would have an ability that says view the top 2 cards of the deck, return 1 to the top and 1 to the bottom of the deck, which is kind of useless right now anyway. But sword, sword, skull. Ooh, sword, sword, skull. Sword, sword, skull, yeah, but then I lose the 3 points and the ability doesn't mean anything, so I am just going to take that and slot that under there like that. Which does not do anything for me. But it did pick up another sword, skull, sword, cup, skull. Anyway, they take that card. We are done. The game, so we go into scoring. Fixing this on the screen just to make it a little clearer. I can't really tell what's getting cut and what's not, but that looks good to me. Then, first card, I don't score anything special, but I get 2 points for every skull, sword, sword. And unfortunately, I only have this one here, skull, sword, sword, but that is 2 points. Then the next column, I get 4 points if I have more skulls than them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And they only have 4, so I get 4 points for that. Plus 1 for every skull, cup, skull. So there's 1 here, there's 1 here, and there's 1 down, so that's 3 points. Next, if this axe has no cups, it does not, that's 3 points. And then 1 point for every sword, skull, skull. There is a sword, skull, skull here. And unfortunately, up and right do not work, so that is that. So we are just getting one more for that for a total score of 13 points, which actually is the lowest score I've scored so far. But in the solo mode, as you can see here on the rule book, says with a score of 13, that's between 12 and 15, I'm acknowledged by the crowd. Now, because this video is somewhat short and there is some difficulty adaptations or adaptations in the book, or difficulty variants, I'm going to play through one more. There is a beginner mode that just doesn't use these tragedy cards. You only got to see one tragedy card in this game because they didn't play many of those effect cards. So I'm going to reset for an expert mode so you get a chance to see a little bit more of those tragedy cards, but also as you can see how the difficulty could be boosted in this game. All right, so here we are all reset. I am going to try to play on expert mode. This is actually the first time I'm playing on expert mode. But there are going to be a couple of things that are different. It plays out exactly the same way I just did, except that when the AI Thespis finishes their first act, I will draw one of these cards in addition to any cards that are normally drawn. Same thing when they finish their second act, I will draw one of these cards as well. So you will get to see more of those cards this time. Also, at the end of the game, any cards that are key scenes in Thespis' 3 acts that have some kind of scoring condition, I will subtract that value from my final score. So I really want to keep big points from being in their key scenes and bury any big points that I don't take. All right, then looking at what I've got, this one's scoring me 4 points if I have more swords, and I get 1 point for sword, skull, sword, which this could easily feed into both this way and down. So I'm going to start with that, and if I want to put a sword to the left side, it has to be in the middle or on the right. Doesn't really matter right yet. Yeah, let's call it Act 2. Yeah, okay, that's Act 2. Means he takes that one here. It is not a feather, doesn't trigger anything. Starting their first scene. All right, turning over the next 2 cards. Again, I need to keep more swords than they have. Then, 4 points if I score each of my patterns at least once. 4 points if I have more skulls than them. Skull, cup, skull, or sorry, sword, cup, sword. I want to be working on this. That sword's in the wrong place, but if I take this, I give them swords, but I think I'm going to do it anyway. Then I need to focus on both skulls and swords. Let's do that. So I'm going to take that potentially as a key scene for myself. We'll see how that plays out. Then they will take this one here like that. So now they do have 1 sword, but there's plenty of opportunity for me to get more swords than they have. So that's okay for now. Ooh, I like what that looks like. I also like what that looks like, and I can't take that because it'll give them 2 swords, but if I give them that, they're going to play one of these, and an additional because it's the end of the first act. Ouch. Oh no, if I take this one, they'll take that one. That's fine. 2 swords would not be a bad thing to have. If this is Act 1's key scene, that actually works pretty well. It may change later, but I'm going to put that there like that. Which means they take these 2. But that's going to be a -4 for me at the end of the game. But I have to. Because if I take this one, it does nothing for me. I mean, I could slot it here, I guess, and get a skull cup. Then they're going to get a... Yeah, you know what? I don't want them to have that 4 points at the top. So I am going to take that, and I am going to slot it underneath this one. We'll see how that plays out later. But that's like that for me. Means they're going to take this one, which stinks. But it doesn't give them any points. But it does now mean I'm going to do 2 of these cards. So the first one says... Final rehearsal. That's not good. As it says, I can't downstage cards in this act. Which means I kill one of those or I kill something else. Okay, not fun. But it is what it is. That's the same one you saw last time. I don't know if I shuffled well enough, but it is what it is. I'm going to do that. And now it's the end of their first act, so I have to draw. Again, dramatic competition. Next round, the stage is only filled to 2 scene cards. Well, that's horrible. Because that's going to downstage stuff. Okay, then this goes out, and that's all we're doing. Well, I guess I can, it says put it on the stage as a reminder. There we go. Which means I have to take one and give them the other. And it has to be this one. This will put their skulls more than me, but yeah. Darn, I should have put this there. But I have to take this. And under here doesn't help me at all. Over here at least scores me off of this, but this is gonna get pushed down because I can't downstage. That's yuck. All right, so he's gonna take this one. Like that, my turn. This goes away now. Turning over 3 more. I need that card, but it's actually gonna work out well for me. Swap one of your cards with a card on the stage. I don't need that to happen. But I'm going to take that so I can get my skulls back up to matching him. Sliding that under there, which actually works out a bit. Because that's starting a sword skull, which is what this pattern is beginning with, means he takes that one. Which means they have 3 swords, but I still have 4 swords, so that's not a problem. Flipping 2 more over. Okay, I like both of those. I like both of those quite a bit. But if I take this, he gets more skulls, which is not great for me. They both have a sword which goes into that fairly nicely. No cups is 3 points, no skulls is 3 points. I'm gonna do that. And that's gonna go here, which means he does get a skull. But we're tied for skulls. No, yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. That does give him 3 points, unfortunately. And now that is the end of Act 2. Yeah, anyway, that's 3 points, 3 points, and 3 points, so I couldn't avoid it. Act 2 ends, we get another one of these that says, sudden inspiration. Next round, Thespis plays the top card of the deck instead of from the stage. All right. I'll put that there to remind me of that. Filling in here, so I have no idea what they're taking. Now, can I score cup, skull, cup? I can't. No, I can't. No, I can't. Because this says 4 points if you score each pattern at least once, but I can't. Because I could if I put it here, but that kills that. And I don't know I'm going to get that. But this is going away anyway. No skulls doesn't work for me there. Rearrange the order of... Ooh, yes. Yes, yes, yes. Which one is better? All right, so I am going to take this. Playing that here, which says I'm rearranging the order of one of my acts, and I'm going to rearrange this one. Because if I put that on top, like that, or like that, hold on. No, that doesn't work. Like that, sword, skull, sword. That means this can go here. Right? But it does have cups now, so that's the wrong one. Then that. But sword, sword, sword doesn't do any good for me then. Yeah, maybe not. Hold on. Maybe not. Give me a minute. It might be that I picked this one anyway, but that skull is going to kill me then. Cup, skull, skull, no. Cup, skull, cup. If I put that there, I could. But then I have to find something I can score here. Yeah, these cards are horrible right now. Cup, skull, cup. If I put this here, there's nothing I can do to reorganize. So I have to take this card. And I have to reorganize to put the key scene on top. And at least if I do that, I got a sword, skull, sword, which does help score that. This sword, 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 though, isn't going to score unless I can get swords across the bottom, which I don't see happening. But they're going to take this one. And that goes away. And that goes to the bottom like that. Then filling in. Ooh, skull, skull. Don't want them to have that. Means I have to take that. And that has to go down here so that I've got skull, cup, skull like that. It means they're taking this one. Last card goes out. How many skulls? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Skull, skull, cup. Would not happen. I'm going to bury something, but I don't know what. I can take either one. Yeah, I got to take that one for two reasons. One, because it gives me another sword, skull, sword here in this column like that. But also, it means that they get only 1 point from that scoring condition like that. And we are at the end of the game. So going into final scoring, this column says, if this is Act 1's key scene, score 2 points. I do. Sword, sword, sword didn't happen. If you have more swords than your opponent, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, they only have 4, so I do, that's 4 points. Plus 1 for every sword, skull, sword. There's 1 there, there's 1 there. Hold on, across, down, down, that's 3 points. Then over here, 4 if you have more skulls. They've got 5, I've got 7, so I do, that's 4 more points. And then 1 for every skull, cup, skull, which is just this one right here, so 1 more point is a total of 14, which was better than last time, except now I have to subtract 1, 2, 3, 4 minus 4 is a score of 10. And unfortunately, with a score of 10, I am simply regarded with indifference, and I have lost the game. But now you've seen both versions of the game, not the easy mode, but I don't think I'd ever play the easy mode anyway. Then looking at the components, this is a prototype copy, as you've already seen, particularly with this PNP version of the solo mode that I'm playing with. But I can sort of always assume that Button Shy will have wonderful card quality. So realistically, what I need to comment on is the art quality. And looking at these cards up close, you've seen them on screen the whole time. First off, the iconography here is wonderful. Button Shy always has great, easily read, very easy to see iconography. I'm not sure if that's changing, if that's prototype or not, but regardless, it looks really good, so I'm assuming it probably stays. But more importantly, this ancient sort of Greek artwork on these cards is gorgeous. I absolutely love the way that all of these cards look. It really oozes the theme that it's trying to show off. The style, just the quality of the art. This is wonderful, wonderful artwork. This may be some of the best artwork I've seen in a Button Shy game. The backs of the cards are pretty straightforward, but it is just sort of like a playing card. But I do love the extra sort of step that was taken to make it look sort of worn and weathered as if they were like an ancient deck of cards. Very, very cool to me. The only other thing that I do like to show off for these games is the wallet, which I don't have, but I will throw an image up right there. So you can see this is a sort of creamish colored wallet, which seems to be a pretty unique and rare color as far as Button Shy wallets go. I really do enjoy the color of that, but more importantly, I just love this sort of ancient Greek theater theming to this. I love the font style and the sort of design style of the way that the title is presented on this wallet. Big fan of everything visually that's going on with this game. That's basically all I want to say about the components. Maybe back up top and I'll let you know what I think about the game itself. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed the playthrough. If you've watched my channel at all, you know that I cover a lot of Button Shy games, a lot of Button Shy solo games in particular, And I tend to be a fan of a lot of them, and more particularly, I tend to be a fan of games that Mike Mullins has had a hand on. Off the top of my head, that's things like the solo mode in Tussie Mussy. I believe Pentaquark is a Mike Mullins game. But anyway, I'm a big fan of Mike Mullins' solo games in these small button-shy card games. And more importantly, on top of that, I tend to be a big fan of sort of spatial puzzlers that score based on locations in a placed grid or connections to things in a placed grid. And Button Shy does a lot of them and does them very, very well. So I was very excited to get a chance to take a look at this, and I have to say it does not disappoint. Dionysia is one that is absolutely adding on to this 3x3 grid scoring based on location kind of game, of which there are quite a few. But that makes sense for me because I know Button Shy sort of holds off on publishing new games like this. So if this one is getting published by Button Shy, that means that it must be doing something unique. And I think that it is, and I do really enjoy what's going on here. So let's go ahead and get into my thoughts, why I enjoy this game. At its heart, this is a card drafting game. You're ultimately drafting 9 cards, putting into a 3x3 grid. And after you've slotted those cards into the grid, you're basically scoring in 2 different ways. You're looking at the top card of the 3 columns, and some of them are going to have a unique scoring condition that they're going to score off of. For example, having the most of a specific kind of icon, scoring patterns on all 3 of those top cards, trying to remember what other ones, having a column that contains none of a specific kind of icon, having that card be in a specific column at the top of the column, and so on. But then on top of that, every single one of these cards is also going to have a pattern of 3 symbols that you have to have left to right horizontally across your cards or top to bottom vertically down a single row or single act of cards in your tableau. And you're going to sort of be placing these, drafting them one by one, placing them such that you're building out a grid of 9 by 9 icons with 3 cards on top that ultimately add to, well, first off, set the patterns that you're scoring on, but then also potentially add on these other larger scoring goals that you're trying to fit in as well. So as you're doing this, you sort of got multiple things going on. You've got at least 3 patterns that you're trying to build in as many sort of orientations as possible, as many times as possible. You're also trying to match these other sort of scoring goal conditions that are printed on these cards. But there's more than that, because some of these cards don't have these scoring goals printed on them. Instead, they have a one-off, unique sort of ability that allows you to manipulate the cards or interact with the cards in different ways. And why is that important? Well, because when you're drafting a card, you can either start a new column by placing it sort of at the top of the non-existing column. But then after that, if you're placing new cards into that same column or same act, you can either upstage or downstage that card. And what that means is you can play a card on top of or slide a card underneath. And when you're sliding a card underneath, what that means is all you're getting is the icons, the 3 icons, like sort of row of icons from that card added to that grid of icons at the bottom of your sort of tableau. But if you're upstaging, that means that card now becomes the key scene in that act, means that top card in the column that is now setting what the pattern is going to score at the end of the game, that is now setting what the goal is that you're trying to accomplish for additional scoring. Or if you play a card at that top key scene area that has one of these one-off abilities, it then triggers the usage of that ability, allowing you to manipulate things, swap things with the market row, and so on, to give you a bit more flexibility about how you're rearranging and how you're setting up this grid with 3 sort of key scenes, 3 scoring cards at the top. So it's not just about setting up the grid to score a certain way, it's also about setting up the scoring conditions that will then influence the grid that needs to be set up to match those scoring conditions. Because along the way, depending on the cards that come out, you may actually have to put something on top in order to change a condition to also better score on other conditions from the second, sort of the other 2 columns that are already existing. So it's not always about fitting a pattern. Sometimes it's about finding a pattern that fits what you've already built in your tableau. And that's a really interesting twist on the way that this game works. And that's basically all there is in the multiplayer game. You're taking turns drafting cards, building out your tableau to see who can make the better tableau. But the AI twists things up even more because the AI is effectively a beat your own score solo mode. There is no sort of score you're competing against. There's just a threshold of scores that you're trying to do better than in order to sort of get yourself into different rankings based on your final score. So what the AI is doing is every turn they're drafting a card as well, and they will always draft the card to the right of the card that you've drafted, and assuming you pick the one all the way on the right, it will wrap around to the leftmost card. So you have some idea of which card they're going to remove. And again, that card doesn't help them in any way. It just means that you no longer have access to that card. But that means more than just that, because a couple of things. If that card is one of the cards that has the automatic ability action, or sort of that one-use, instant use ability action, the AI is not going to do that because they're not smart enough to do whatever it says. Instead, there's a deck of what are called tragedy cards that somehow messes with what you've got. It might force you to swap 2 cards in your row. It might force you to return a card that you've taken and draw a card at random from the top of the deck. It's going to sort of force you to mess up your cards or prevent you from doing certain things. There's one that won't let you put any more cards into a specific column or act until the other acts are finished. There are cards that say you can no longer upstage or you can no longer downstage in a particular act. So they're sort of messing with you in different ways through that ability that gets triggered when they take one of those cards. Otherwise, if they don't take one of those cards, it's just going into their tableau and they're not really doing anything to you, except remember the card they take is a card that you can't take. And also, I told you some of those endgame scoring goals score based on having the most of a specific kind of icon. Well, if you're allowing them to take cards that have that icon, you can no longer score that icon. So you really have to be careful about which cards you're giving them, not just because it can activate tragedies that mess with you, but also because it can sort of fight against the things you're trying to collect and or fight against the sort of goals that you're trying to score at the end of the game. And this balance really sort of adds an extra layer of interesting thought to the solo mode that I really do enjoy in this game. So you really have to pay attention to not only what you're taking, not only what's staying out there that could then be taken by you in the next turn, but also what you're allowing them to take, preventing yourself from getting, messing with your goals, and potentially triggering those tragedies. Now, that's the other interesting thing, is that those instant use abilities are sort of extra useful here because some of them allow you to swap cards or move cards around, and if a tragedy card has affected you and sort of messed up your plan by moving things to different places or giving you cards you don't really need, then you might actually need to use more of those instant trigger abilities to get things back to the way that you wanted them to be. And I continue to enjoy this game. It's a very quick spatial puzzle, again, 3x3 grid kind of game. But it makes me think in ways that I haven't really thought about as far as how I'm planning and when I'm planning and what I'm focusing on at any given turn. And I'm really, really enjoying it. Now, this game does have several different difficulty levels. I will never play the beginner level because those tragedy cards do add an interesting wrinkle to the game that is unique to the solo mode. The standard mode is, I think, where I'll find myself playing the most. You saw both the standard mode and the difficult mode, or if you didn't, go back and check them out because I did a playthrough of both of those. But again, the standard mode is the one where they only flip over tragedy cards when they take a card that would be one of those instant trigger ability action things. Whereas the difficult mode, which I then did show as well, I've played a few times now since I recorded, that was my first time playing on video, is interesting for a slightly different reason. So for the solo player as they're playing, every time they place a card, they're just sort of placing Act 1, bottom, middle, top, Act 2, bottom, middle, top, Act 3, bottom, middle, top. But in the difficult mode, after they fill Act 1 and after they fill Act 2, they will play a tragedy card, even if they haven't drafted any of those cards that would normally make them play a tragedy card. Which means you see more of the tragedy cards, which means you've got more nonsense meaning crazy stuff to deal with on your turn to sort of continue doing what it is that you wanted to do before they messed you up. And it really does throw a wrench in the gears and make things quite a bit more difficult. Also, it does something interesting as well, because I told you those cards that don't have the instant action, but instead have the special scoring goal at the end, do nothing for the solo opponent. Well, in the difficult mode, any of them that are at the top of the 3 acts in their tableau, means the 3 key scenes in their tableau, that coin value of whatever that special goal, only the special goal, not the patterns, but whatever the value of that special goal is actually subtracted from your score. So now you're sort of trying to not give them high scoring cards in their top rows, as well as dealing with additional tragedies that come out. And the reason I say I'll play the standard mode more than the difficult mode probably is because the difficult mode is incredibly difficult. I just played a game before recording this and I scored maybe 1 or 2 points in the difficult mode. So it definitely does up the difficulty quite a bit. But by throwing in more tragedies, by throwing in this extra wrinkle of subtracting points based on these scoring goals that they take, it does add some more interesting decisions and thoughts to the game. So it's not just a step up in difficulty, it's also a step up in interesting decision making. So it's not the kind of game where I'm only going to be playing the normal mode all the time. But I'll probably play the normal mode all the time with the occasional difficult game thrown in just to get those extra sort of gears running in my head, because I do really appreciate the extra level of complexity. I don't know if it's complexity, but the extra level of sort of required thought making as you're playing the more difficult version of the game. And I appreciate that it's not just here's harder, but here's harder with some more interesting twists added to the game as well. I think that's pretty much all I have to say about this game, but as I've mentioned several times now, I'm really enjoying this. If you are a fan of these sort of 3x3 grid spatial puzzle kinds of games, this is one I absolutely recommend that you check out. As a solo game, this is really good, and I would definitely recommend it even just for solo, only if you grab that solo expansion. As a head-to-head game, I haven't had a chance to play it, but the idea that it is a grid-based game that you're drafting and fighting a little bit over the cards with each other is nice as well. So definitely check it out, even for multiplayer, even for solo play, even for a mix of both. Whatever it is, if you enjoy a spatial puzzle, this is a very good spatial puzzle game, at least in my opinion. As I'm recording this video, this game actually has already launched on Kickstarter. I was a little bit late in getting my prototype copy of this game. So definitely, if you're interested, as quick as you can, because I'm not sure how much longer the campaign will be running, check out the link down below in the comments to head over to the Kickstarter page and check out the campaign for yourself. As always, I hope that this video was helpful for you, and if it was, I do ask that you remember to please like, subscribe, and click the bell icon below, and I'll see you all next time. Thanks.